All right, y'all. If you believe in the Bible, this is a very interesting story. And I'm assuming a majority of y'all believe in the Bible, right? NBC News posted this headline. They said they have a new study that finds potential alien megastructures known as Dyson spheres. And a lot of people with knowledge of the scriptures are reminded of the book of Ezekiel and also the book of Revelation. Now, let me play this video, and I want you to listen to the details of how they describe these quote unquote Dyson spheres. And you let me know if you notice anything that sounds a little bit familiar. All right, let's go.
A group of researchers say they've identified at least 7 stars that might be surrounded by super advanced alien megastructures known as Dyson spheres. Yes, I said alien structures, and I know what you're thinking, but just stay with me here, because the basic idea was this. Superior intelligent life might build big structures around their home stars or planets as a way to harness or reuse that energy. A 1960s physicist who came up with this idea, Freeman Dyson, argued that if these structures existed, there'd be so much energy that human scientists on Earth could probably spot it because it would emit a lot of infrared radiation. So in this new study, researchers say they found 7 sources glowing in the infrared, those are their words, but couldn't find an obvious explanation for why.
They said that they found 7 sources glowing in the infrared, but couldn't find an obvious explanation to what it was. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 sources. Maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but 7 sources glowing in the infrared that you can't find an explanation for. That's a very specific number. And a lot of people were talking about the book of Revelation, which we're going to get in and open up in a second. But let's just finish this.
These sources are glowing so much, which could mean they're Dyson spheres or something else entirely. And what I'm saying is, what? Space is so crazy. I wish I understood it better. So let's talk to a scientist to help wrap our heads around this. I'm joined now by Professor Jana Levin. She is an astrophysicist and author of the book Black Hole Survival Guide, as well as the Claire Tow Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Barnard College of Columbia University. Professor, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I tried to explain it a little bit. That was my very dirty version. I was going to be like, yeah, but I'm an English major who just had Google. You have a PhD in physics from MIT. So how do you explain Dyson spheres?
I think there was an excellent explanation. If you look at where we are relative to the sun, we're very far away. We're the 3rd planet in. And imagine the light that we try to collect, let's say, with solar panels on people's homes or on any roofs to collect that energy. Imagine if you got really close and you caught everything the sun was emitting. It's just a tremendous amount of power. And so Freeman Dyson was thinking about this. Actually, he was originally inspired by sci-fi, written by Olaf Stapleton like decades earlier. And his idea wasn't so much a solid sphere. It was really like satellites in orbit, a network of things that would be orbiting and would essentially, what we would now say, have solar panels and are collecting that energy.
So what do you make of this study, just generally speaking, I guess? Do you think it's possible that these are the elusive Dyson spheres?
So I think it's very unlikely, but I'm open. We have to be open as scientists. If we think we know the answer before we go and observe, then we're already defeated. I think it's terribly unlikely, but it's extremely exciting and interesting to think about. And it's fun to think about. What's probably going to happen is we're going to look at this infrared signature that you mentioned, and we're going to find out that there's a natural cause. So a lot of things emit heat in the infrared. You know, infrared goggles allow us to see human bodies and the heat of human bodies. And it's not that dissimilar that when we look in the infrared, we see things emitting heat. So the idea was if we had this very technologically advanced civilization, like thousands of years beyond where we are right now, and they could build such a thing and it was collecting all this energy, it would collect also some heat and it would have to cool off, and we would see that in the infrared. But there are other natural possibilities that could explain.
What do you think those possibly could be?
Well, it could be a very young star that still has some material around it in kind of a disk, and that's how planets form. Planets coalesce out of these early disks.
That one is actually really interesting that they just showed. So this one right here is very, very interesting. Because in the book of Ezekiel, he's describing this vision that he got of angels, and he said it's almost like a sphere inside of a sphere surrounded by eyes. And we'll read the verse, but I don't know. I'm just reminded, I think I was watching a video recently. I reacted to it. It was Tucker Carlson. He was talking about Nephilim and alien and that whole conversation. And he was pretty much saying that, humans, we can get in the ballpark, but we're very bad when it comes to the details. And essentially, he was using the analogy of like, if there's a crime that's committed, if somebody's trying to explain the suspect to detectives, like we could get the general ideas, like, oh yeah, he was tall, he was, whatever skin color, he was fat, he was had long hair, but the details is when it becomes kind of murky, right? So the fact that we have this representation that they're calling a Dyson sphere or whatever they want to call it, right? It does resemble a biblical description of angels. It's just the details that are kind of murky, but the core elements are all there. So it's very, very interesting. And it's like whenever there's discoveries like this and the media doesn't know how to describe it, it's like they instantly say, oh, it's aliens. It's like some advanced, civilization, some advanced beings that have all this technology that are way more advanced than we are. And they know how to harness this power and harness this energy. It's like y'all take it all the way there, but y'all can't even open up the Bible, which was written how many years ago, way before all this other talk, right? Y'all can't even open up the Bible and just, do a quick little reference because it's all there. It seems like all the craziness that we see going on in the world, you could trace it back to the Bible and you can figure out what it is. But we don't want to believe it. We want to go to the PhDs. So we want to go to the PhD of astrology and the PhD of physics to try to help us understand what it is. But the PhD who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on an MIT education can't even explain what we're finding. It's very interesting times that we're living in.
It still has some material around it in kind of a disk, and that's how planets form. Planets coalesce out of these early disks, and those can emit in the infrared. It could be that there's actually an entire galaxy in the distance behind the star, and we're seeing that galaxy. We can't disambiguate those. Or it could be planetary collisions. I mean, there are natural explanations. But I think it's worth noting, we're looking just 1,000 light years around us. That sounds far, but it's actually really close. That's our backyard. The entire Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across.
She said 1,000 light years. It sounds far, but it's actually really close. That's our backyard. So these Dyson spheres, quote unquote, right, are now approaching into our backyard. I don't want to get all crazy, conspiracy, the world's ending, this, that, and the third. But, we're living in some crazy end times. Just look around. I don't know what you want to describe it. I don't know what you want to call it. I saw some comments saying that the angels are getting closer. I don't really know what that means because, God is here now. God is here. Yes, Jesus is coming back, but the presence of God is here right now. You know what I mean? But it is interesting that she said these objects seem far away, but in all reality, that's in our backyard. Like they pulling up right now.
And there are probably more planets in the Milky Way galaxy than there are stars. So we're talking of hundreds of billions and maybe trillions of planets out there. And I think we're in an era where we think the emergence of life is possibly inevitable elsewhere, that we're not the only example. Now, whether or not they've survived with thousands of years of industrial advancement to build a Dyson sphere is a different story.
Yeah. Do you think there is a scenario where a Dyson sphere might actually exist, or do you think this is really just the stuff of sci-fi fantasy?
I think it's feasible, unlikely. If you look at where we are since the Industrial Revolution, it's only a couple hundred years. We're in a precarious position. We have climate change. We have struggles with nuclear power, nuclear weapons that are could be destructive destructive. It's unclear that any species that makes it that advanced could survive far enough into their own future to be able to build a Dyson sphere. But there are optimists out there who say we'll find a way.
Yeah, right. The universe is a pretty big place.
Well, I don't know anyone more advanced than God, so that could be one possibility that you're overlooking or underlooking, depending on how you want to say it. I don't know. Let's go to Ezekiel. Well, actually, real quick, because somebody said this. And look, I'm not an expert on the Bible. Never claimed to be. Probably never will be. Definitely not an expert on the book of Revelation because there's just so much to interpret. But somebody said, go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 20. And it says, verse 20, as for the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. So it's interesting that they have identified specifically 7 of these quote unquote spheres. Specifically 7. It's like, bro, it could have been any other number. There's so many numbers, but nah, it was 7. Specifically 7. Ezekiel chapter 1, the glory of the Lord. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually. And in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal, and from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had human likeness, but each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the soles of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands, and the 4 had their faces and their wings. Thus, their wings touched one another. Each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. As for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, and the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. And the 4 had a face of an eagle. Such were their faces, and their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of which touched the wing of another, while 2 covered their bodies, and each went straight forward. Wherever the Spirit would go, they went, without turning as they went. That just gives me the chills. It's like, you know what? God sees everything. God sees everything. He sees everything. God is everywhere, all at once, sees everything, is omnipresent. Nothing that happens here on this earth is hidden from God. This is his creation. This is his creation. As for the likeness of the creatures, of the living creatures, their appearance, this is verse 13, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches moving to and fro among the living creatures. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures darted to and fro, like the appearance of a flash of lightning. Now, as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the earth beside the living creatures, one for each of the 4 of them. As for the appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl, some type of stone. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it's some type of stone. And the 4 had the same likeness, their appearance and construction being as it were a wheel within a wheel. That's what I was talking about. He said it's like a wheel within a wheel. and they see everything without even having to turn. Crazy. When they went in any of their four directions without turning as they went. Just think about that for a second. When they went in any of their four directions without turning as they went. How is that possible? And their rims were tall and awesome. And the rims of all four were full of eyes all around. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them. And when the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose. Wherever the Spirit wanted to go, they went. And the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When those went, these went. And when those stood, these stood. And when those rose from the earth, the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Over the heads of the living creatures, there was the likeness of an expanse, shining like awe-inspiring crystal, spreading out above their heads. And under the expanse, their wings were stretched out straight, one toward another. And each creature had two wings covering its body. And when they went, I heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of many waters, like the sound of the Almighty, a sound of tumult, like the sound of an army. The wings sounded like an army. Just the wings. When they stood still, they let down their wings. And there came a voice from above, the expanse over their heads. When they stood still, they let down their wings, and above the expanse over their heads, there was the likeness of a throne, in appearance like sapphire. And seated above the likeness of the throne was a likeness with a human appearance. And upward from what had the appearance of his waist, I saw as it were gleaming metal, like the appearance of fire enclosed all around. And downward from what had the appearance of his waist, I saw as it were the appearance of fire, and there was brightness around him, like the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud on the day of rain. So was the appearance of the brightness all around. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face and heard the voice of one speaking. I read something, it said that, the lesson for us today is that through his marvelous providence, God moves in the affairs of all nations to work out his own unseen plan, always at work, intricately designed, never wrong and never late. Romans 8:28. I don't know how you want to view this. You could view this as a reminder that God sees everything. He sees everything. And that our time is running out. I don't know how you want to view it. But the fact of the matter is, this is God's creation. This is not the creation of aliens or extraterrestrials or anything like that. That's just a human way of trying to understand the glory and the creation of God. That's just us trying to make sense of it in our own understanding. But our own understanding is nothing in comparison to the wisdom and knowledge of God. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways higher than our ways. It doesn't even compare. So you can line up all the PhDs from all around the world in one room, and their wisdom, their knowledge, their understanding wouldn't even be a grain of salt in comparison to what God knows. So I just want to leave y'all with that. Let me know what you think about this new study. I'm very curious to know your thoughts about it. I'm very curious to know what you make of it. Get in my comments. Join the conversation. I'm out, y'all.